Welcome back to Valencia. Under a blue sky and perfect conditions, the Moto2 riders are going to have a very different experience to what they had last time out in Estoril. Steve English and Fran Wilde guiding you through the action here in the south of Spain. And Fran, very different to what we had last time out in Estoril, where torrential rain, treacherous conditions caught out plenty of these Moto2 riders.
Yeah, it really did. Like you say, conditions in Estoril pretty atrocious, but actually in Moto2, despite the fact we have very, very different conditions here in Valencia, some similar names near the front, so that's good news for those guys. And here we see a bit of a review of what went down in Portugal. A pretty dramatic start to the race for Hector Garzo, who was immediately disappointed there. And yeah, we saw Edgar Pons from pole, then just starting to slip down the order. We saw Montella go through, and then also, as you'll see coming up soon, I'm sure, the Italian, unfortunately, yeah, there we go. Big mistake from him, crashing out of the lead, and then seeming to get caught out not so long after as well. And it was Nicky Tuuli of Finland who took his first ever victory in this championship, in his first ever race in the class. So really, really impressive stuff from the Finn. And then in race 2, we had a fairly similar set of names near the top for quite a while in the initial laps as it had dried out. And then it was, yeah, a mistake from Tuuli there, saw him fall out of the lead, able to get back into contention though and end up on the podium. But it was this man, Alessandro Zacconi, who took his first Moto2 European Championship win. And two names we know well from the 2016 Supersport season when they both burst onto the scene. So yeah, should be two to watch now. They seem to be really in gear in Moto2. And yeah, really, really great to see both of them so competitive here at the moment. So as you can see, it'll be 19 laps for Moto2, and yeah, beautiful, beautiful blue skies as you can see in the background of that shot. Yeah,
and Fran, of course, for Zacconi and Nicky Tuuli, as you said, names we've known for a long time from the Supersport Championship, and also for Nicky Tuuli racing in the Moto2 World Championship last year as well. But obviously for Zacconi, it's been a bit of a varied path for him over the last few years. He's raced in a lot of different classes, but looks very much at home here in the CEV Moto2 Championship.
He does indeed, and definitely, yeah, that first win really cements his place now as one of the guys to watch in this championship, which is good. Had a pretty good year last year, you know, some good performances from the Italian, but yeah, it was 10th overall for him last year and the best finish of 4th in Valencia. And this year so far he took 5th in that really, really difficult wet race, the first one of the day in Estoril, and then obviously won that one on a much drier track when everyone was on dries, as they're not called, but yeah, back on slicks. The Italian was really, really impressive, was able to take complete control of that race in the latter stages and take a yeah, fairly authoritative victory, which I'm sure would be a bit of a disappointment for this man, Edgar Pons, the number 57, who started from pole in Estoril and then just found it a little bit tougher going, and he'll start from pole again today. But I'm sure now there's been some familiar rivals in this class near the front for a while, the likes of Garzo, who was in the class last year as well, 3rd overall in the standings, won in Albacete. Jesco Raffin obviously was the champion last year. He has now moved on to pastures new, currently a replacement rider in the World Championship. But yeah, the Swiss rider has left a bit of a power vacuum at the top, and I'm sure fellow former champion as well, Edgar Pons, will be looking to fill it. But not the easiest of starts for him, and it was, yeah, our 2016 explosive Supersport stars who took those first 2 wins. And Tuuli especially really arrived with a bang in this class, as he did back in 2016 when he took 3 podiums and 3 wildcards in Supersport, and really took on Keenan Sofoglu a couple of times, which is a super, super impressive debut, and of course was also a winner in that class as well. I think he won Magny Core 2017, so he has previous winning experience, and then also, like we were saying, previous Moto2 experience as well in the World Championship, does Tuuli, and did manage to score points. He was drafted in partway through the season to replace Zulfami Khairuddin, who is now kind of the rider coach in control of that Sepang International Circuit rider development program. But Tuuli, yeah, he hit the ground running, and it shows how tough it really is at world level in Moto2 to be able to get in that mix, but the Finn was able to be a point scorer, and now obviously already a race winner at European level. And yeah, it's this man Edgar Pons, like I was saying, who's maybe a little bit on the back foot in terms of the standings, and I'm sure he'll be looking to convert his pole position pace here in the dry to some serious points.
Yeah, for Edgar Pons, as you can see there, finished on the podium in both races in Estoril and looked really strong all the way through practice here as well. Just looks like he's back on form as well. Of course, Edgar Pons, former champion here in the European Moto2 Championship. He's won 11 races. Is he going to be able to make it the dozen here today? Certainly starts the race as the clear favourite, Fran.
He does indeed. We've seen a couple of problems for Pons, nothing too drastic in the wet sort of over the last couple of seasons, so I'm sure he'll be glad to see that it's dry, but also not a rider who's going to take too many risks, because he is one of those on the grid who definitely knows that championships come through consistency. So yeah, I'm sure with that double podium finish in Estoril this year, certainly a better start than he had last year when it was a pretty disastrous opener for him in Portugal. But yeah, I'm sure he'll be well aware of the guys who've arrived, the likes of Thule and now Zacconi, who's kind of arrived in that front running group. He has to keep an eye on them, and of course this man Hector Garzo, who yeah, is a race winner. It was Albacete last year in the wet, but yeah, second place in the dry today, and I'm sure another one looking for a little bit more today than he got in Estoril after that crash pretty much immediately out of the race in race 1. Yeah,
crashed at pretty much turn 2, turn 3 in Estoril, and definitely a rider that's going to look to bounce back from that. But for Garzo, he's qualified in that front row of the grid so many times here in this class. But for Nicky, well, Nicky Richard Tootie, I never knew that was Nicky's middle name until this weekend.
It's a bit of a difference on this entry list, isn't it, compared to Moto2 and Supersport? But yeah, solid to see that middle name there from the Finn.
Yeah, it might be a bit different on the entry list, no different on the racetrack though for Nicky Tootie, a former Supersport front runner and a front runner straight off the bat here in the Moto2 European Championship, and he's been a front row qualifier for both races, finished first and second in both races in Estoril as well. And for the rider stepping back from the Moto2 World Championship, he's definitely been able to do this and build up his confidence quite a lot. You can see Tommaso Marcone on the grid as well, the 19-year-old Italian, and for Marcone, he was able to finish inside the top 10 in both races in Estoril. As you can see, he is a podium man in this class as well though, Fran. He's at 2 podiums in the CEV Championship.
Yeah, so I think that was at Jerez where he's had a podium. So yeah, it was fairly, and Albacete, sorry, I've forgotten that one. But all I remember honestly from Albacete was the flood. It was a traumatic weekend for all of us on and off track. But yeah, so he was, yeah, it was actually his teammate, new teammate Jari Montella, who slightly outshone him a little bit on his debut in the class in Estoril. Obviously did crash out the lead, but still really impressive performance. So yeah, it'd be interesting now. Marcon seems to have taken back a little bit of that impetus within that team. Now we're back in the dry and back on slightly more familiar ground. And here we have Alessandro Zacconi, obviously a race winner for the first time in this class last time out, and yeah, a little bit further back on the grid, but cannot be counted out, especially I imagine his confidence now is sky high after that pretty much demolition job of the field, really.
Yeah, for Zacconi in that opening races of the year, he finished inside the top 5 in race 1 and then was able to claim the race 2 victory. Jari Montella, though, as you said earlier on, Fran, teammate to Marcon as well on that speed up, and for the number 55, he's looked good all the way through this weekend as well, and he looked good in Estoril as well. As you said, he retired from the race lead with that big crash, then followed it up with another big crash. But Montella, the 19-year-old Italian, he certainly looks like he's going to be a man to watch during the course of this championship.
He does indeed. He looks like he's settled into life on a Moto2 machine very, very well indeed, and definitely can't doubt the focused look down there on the grid. Absolutely stock still, staring ahead, ready for war down there. And here we have Marcel Brenner, so the Swiss rider number 25. Bit of a more difficult opening round from Brenner than with, you know, kind of slightly out of position considering what we've seen from the Swiss rider. So yeah, it should be interesting to see what he can do, and much further up the grid in 7th here. Yeah,
Marcel Brenner, generally a top 10 runner in the CEV Moto2 Championship, and this is his 5th season in the class as well, so lots of experience for the Swiss rider on his bike, and you'd certainly expect him to be able to make some progress from 7th, try and get himself up into those top 5 spots. There are riders with a bit less experience than him around them, so maybe able to use that to get himself up through into those top 5 spots. But for Brenner, regular top 10 runner, you'd expect to see him able to try and just at least score some decent points to make up for some of the disappointment from Estoril. Beside him on the grid is going to be Miguel Pons, another rider, Fran, that you'd always think should be able to do a little bit more. Another rider that should always be inside those top 10 spots. Miguel, as you can see there, 21 years of age. He was inside the top 5 in Estoril, but he'll certainly be looking to try and make another step forward during this race, Fran. He needs to try and make sure he's inside those top 5 spots.
Yeah, definitely, and he has done that before at this track, and he was 9th overall in Moto2 last year. So like we said, another one of those like Brenner, who was 11th overall last season, but consistently certainly within that top 10, if not knocking on the door of quite a little bit further up. Yeah, he should be another one to watch to see if he can kind of show that Moto2 European Championship experience a little bit more and fight off the new guys, the likes of Thule, and see if he can get a little bit further up than Estoril.
And you can see Kazmadin on the grid as well, third row of the grid. Of course, he's a familiar name to some fans, having seen him in the Moto3 World Championship actually in Sepang a few years ago. Retired from that race, but now in the CEV Moto2 Championship. He had a top 10 finish last time out in Estoril, and the Malaysian rider certainly just looking to build on that. But he's not the only rider that we've seen at times just try and come back to go to the CEV Moto2 Championship, try and build up that experience, and certainly won't be the last. Matteo Ferrari, though, a name familiar to a lot of people from Moto3 World Championship for 3 years. He's also a former Stock 1000 front runner as well. He was actually a race winner last year at Imola as a wild card on the Barney Ducati. He's a good rider, Fran.
Yeah, definitely, and I believe Italian National Superbike Championship as well, just pipped by Michele Pirro, so that's definitely no slouch, because Michele Pirro, extremely quality and extremely fast rider. So yeah, Ferrari got a lot of experience on a few different classes now, and yeah, it'd be interesting to see what he can do here. And another one who'll be doing Moto E, like the likes of Thule and reigning but absent champion Jesco Raffin as well.
Yeah, plenty of riders double jobbing in Moto E through the course of this season. Definitely going to be a championship to keep an eye on as well. We've actually got the likes of Maria Herrera racing in that as well. She's racing in the World Supersport Championship as well. So lots of riders trying to make that step across. But in this Moto2 race, on pole position, Edgar Pons chasing his 12th race victory in this class, just in front of Hector Garzo on the Tech 12 bike. Nicky Thule on that front row of the grid.
Yeah, and then Tommaso Marcon, Zacconi, your race 2 winner from Estoril, Jari Montella, your almost race winner from Estoril, and then Brenner, Pons and Kazmaidin completing that third row of the grid.
Yeah, on the fourth row of the grid, Matteo Ferrari, Stock 1000 race winner in the past, as we said, and then also Ramdan Rosley, podium man from Estoril, and Kubo on the fourth row of the grid.
And then Vale Sarmoon Noruddin, a familiar name as well.
And then we've got Takashi, we've got Matt Magler and Jerry Salim on the sixth row of the grid.
Another familiar ATC name there. And Matteo Ciprietti, Alex Ruiz, Cedric Tonga on row 7.
Diaz, we've got Beverly Hills, Benny Solis on the 8th row of the grid, and then also Alessandro Zetti.
And Chandler Cooper, Piotr Bisakirski, we decided on the pronunciation of that, and Leon Orgis.
Fair play to you, Frank, because I'm just calling Pete the Pole through the course of this race. We've got Lucal, we've got Pavlainen and Julian Meyer on the second last row of the grid.
And then Kevin Orgis and Philippe Legallo, familiar name, one of the older competitors in the field, just bringing up the rear of this grid. And obviously we do have some Stock 6 runners out there as well, not to be forgotten. Championship within a championship in this Moto2 European Championship. So yeah, how many times can I say championship in one sentence? Championship.
You need points to win the championship, and that's what these riders at the front are going to be thinking about. As you said, the front in the Stock 1000, Stock 600 championship for this. We've got the likes of Pavlainen, we've also got Lucal, we've got the two Orgis brothers, we've got Diaz, and we've also got Legala and Zetti. So there's a handful of Stock 600 riders in this Moto2 field. And I was out watching trackside, you can certainly see the difference between a Moto2 machine and those Stock 600 machines. But at the front of the field, it's tough to look past the likes of Edgar Pons. I said he's chasing that dozen victories in this class. He's a former champion, lots of experience. He looks really good here in Valencia as well. Everywhere I went, watching around the track, he looks really strong. So expect the number 57 to be good. But the key thing for Edgar Pons, Fran, it's always about making that start.
Yeah, he needs to make that start, and also, yeah, lots of speed, lots of pole positions for Edgar, the gas man, but maybe at times not quite able to bank that full 25-point haul. Certainly something, yeah, he'll be looking to do twice today. Well, no, he wouldn't, because there's only one Moto2 race. Apologies. He'll certainly be looking to do that today to strike back a bit. Like we saw in the standings there, it's currently Nicky Tooley who is at the head of the table, so pretty impressive debut from the Finn, and Pons, I'm sure, will have his eye on the top of the championship standings to take back some ground in this race. Yeah,
Pons, of course, a former champion, and when you look down the list of former champions, there's the likes of Jordi Torres, a Moto2 Grand Prix race winner and also World Superbike race winner. Jasko Raffin, we've already mentioned, he's a double champion in this class, just like Jordi Torres. We'll see Raffin during the course of the Moto E Championship. Eric Granado, Stephen Odendahl, and as I said, Edgar Pons, that man on the number 57, he's a former champion way back in 2015 in this class, so he wants to get himself back to the front. He wants to win this championship again, and he knows if he's going to win this championship again, he needs to win races as well. If you're able to win here at Valencia, that's a good starting point for Pons, because in the difficult conditions in Estoril, he was able to pick up 2 podium finishes. You can see Nicky Tooley, race victor from the opening race of the season on that number 18, gets himself onto that front row of the grid. So on this grid, we've got Pons, we've then got the number 4 of Garzo, and Nicky Tooley making up that front row.
Pretty exciting front row. I think 3 of the guys who are expected to really play a big role in this race, and it looks like we are ready to go.
Yes, we're waiting for the red lights to come on. Edgar Pons on pole position from Garzo and Nicky Tooley, and the grid is ready for this 19-lap Moto2 race here in Valencia, and it looks like Tooley's made a very good start on the number 18, getting down the inside of Garzo straight away. Number 25 with a bit of a moment there actually off the line, but Edgar Pons, he's going to have the whole shot down in towards turn 1. Is Tooley going to try and attack down into turn 1 on Garzo? Not quite close enough to be able to do that. 25 gets down the inside. Good move there from Marcel Brenner. We mentioned him at the start, Fran. He's been able to get himself straight away into the front of that grid, but a big mistake from Brenner down in towards turn 2. It's actually opened the door for someone else to try and get down the inside. Looks like it's Zacconi down into 4th position. Yeah,
Zacconi made a little bit of progress there up from his grid spot in the middle of the second row, and Brenner, yeah, looking a little bit scrappy in the early stages, but not a bad start in terms of position, certainly from the Swiss rider. But yeah, Pons able to get that whole shot, and Garzo able to hang on to second, although it did initially look like Tooley was getting a slightly better start off the front row, but it's as you were at the moment in the top 3.
Yeah, Tooley was able to get off the line well, but then just lost out a bit of ground. Looks like there's actually a problem there for one of the riders. You can see some smoke coming out of the back, and it's Brenner on the 25 just having what could be a bit of a technical problem there. You can see the amount of smoke coming off, and then that's some fluid going on to the rear wheel. That's why he lost the rear end there as well. We saw him have a big moment down in towards turn 2, so maybe just had that problem right off from this race, but disappointment there for Brenner, and with only one race here as well this weekend, Fran, that's going to just compound it for the Swiss rider.
Yeah, we were saying earlier, for some of the guys in the ETC who'd had a disappointing end to race 1, that they get another shot at it, time to regroup. Unfortunately for the Moto2 guys this weekend, it is just one outing. So for Brenner, that is a bit of a heartbreaker. Like we said, bit of a tougher opening round for the Swiss rider, and here seemed to be real back in position, or what you'd expect from him, and then yeah, that seems like some really bad luck for him, and out so early.
Yeah, only one outing this weekend for the Moto2 riders, and Audi straight away there for Brenner on the 25. But at the front of the field, Garzo on that Tech 12 bike, trying to attack on Edgar Pons. Pons able to defend into turn 1. But with these Moto2 bikes, you can try and set your moves up a little bit more in advance than what we've seen from the European Talent Cup or from the Moto3 riders. These bikes a lot bigger, a lot more powerful. You're actually able to use the drive grip. You're able to try and set up moves a little bit more in advance. This is a very technical racetrack for these riders. You're able to be quite tactical around here as well, Frank.
Yeah, it's such a different spectacle to watch these guys than it is sort of Moto3 and ETC around here. You can see Marcel Brenner looking pretty dejectedly on. Have to see when that seemed to occur, round about here.
Contact there with the 55 as well.
So yeah, that's whatever's happened there. Obviously, yeah, the Swiss rider falling victim to that move, but I'm sure he'll be a little bit disappointed. He can see another out the seat moment as he realises something's gone on there.
And one rider down as well. That's on the oil, potentially left there from the into the Toolies down. It looks like we could have another rider down with him. Is that Zacconi as well? No, it's not. It's the 11 of Matteo Ferrari, and you can see with Nicky Tooley there just holding his wrist as well. We've got a red flag out.
Yeah, he seemed to get caught up in that incident. Obviously, another rider crashing, heading into the same gravel trap, and we've got the red flag out. So it must be something down from Brenner's crash.
Yeah, Brenner
or
clearly
technical
problem there for Brenner, and it's left left some fluid on the racetrack, and that's what's caused these issues for all the riders down in towards that corner. That was a Coney down as well. So the first riders to hit that patch that's been left, all getting caught out. That's Matteo Ferrari just getting his bike moved. And for all these riders, such disappointment whenever an incident like this happens, because it's not your fault. You just come across that fluid out on track, and now you have to try and just make sure you're able to get your bike back to the pits. You can see for Matteo Ferrari, he has to try and get his bike back to the pits because it needs repair work. It needs to try and see if he's able to get himself back out and get himself into the restarted race. But for Matteo Ferrari, disappointment, Fran, because when you've had a strong pace all the way through the weekend and you're taken out by an incident completely outside of your control, real disappointment. You can see Nicky Tooley is still down on the ground as well. That's down at turn 8. It's a fast entry into turn 8, and if the fluid's been left down, you actually enter into that corner really quick. 5th gear, around about 140 mile an hour, and it's so easy. If there's that little bit of fluid down, you lose that grip and suddenly the bike goes from underneath you. Nothing the riders can do about that. And hopefully for Nicky Tooley, we'll see him back on his feet and able to recover from that.
Yeah, like you said, you can see from the pure calibre of the riders affected there, it's completely unavoidable when you do hit something like that on the track. So yeah, it must have been from that Brenner incident, and hopefully we'll see the fin up soon. And yeah, he seemed to get caught up as I think Ferrari was it who went down right behind him. So yeah, red flags at the moment, everyone back to the pits. But like you say, for those who have been able to get straight up and get their bikes, kind of start rescuing their bikes to get back to the pits, it's all about the restart. And Nicky Tooley, I'm sure it's all about just checking that the fin is okay. Yeah, for Nicky, we saw him just holding on to that wrist, so hopefully for Nicky we'll be able to see him back on his feet. But disappointment there for the Finnish rider. You can see Matteo Ferrari, he's been able to ride himself back into the pits, so he's been able to at least get that bike restarted. Bit of work to be done for his team though. It's not a naked class, so you can see there for Matteo Ferrari just trying to make sure that he's able to get that bike back, get that bike ready again, Fran. Yeah, exactly. Like you said, if it is just a fairly low side incident for Ferrari, it looked like, and unfortunately he was not the main one who got that impact from his bike when he went down. So yeah, for him it's all about trying to get back to the pits and see if that bike can get ready to start the race again when we get back underway. And then you can see Tooley getting taken off the track. Yeah, tough sight to see for the championship leader, the man that won the opening race of the year in Estoril, finished second in race 2, qualified on the front row, was running in those leading positions, comes across that fluid that's been left on the track, and just unfortunate for Nicky Tooley, and hopefully we'll be able to see him back on his feet in no time and able to get back out there in this Moto2 field, because he's looked really good, Fran, through Estoril, through all the way through this weekend. He looks like he's been able to adapt to Estoril, a brand new circuit. Obviously Valencia he knows from last year in the Moto2 World Championship as well. Yeah, quality rider Nicky Tooley. I think we both agree on this. I was very, very excited to see his name in this class for this season, and of course Moto2 as well, where he had some good pace in testing there as well, and they'll obviously be out on track for the first time now, a little bit delayed to the original schedule due to the incident and that fire down at Jerez in the test, but they'll be out at Sachsenring, which will be another challenge for the likes of Tooley. And yeah, like we mentioned earlier, the reigning champion in this class as well, Jesko Raffin, who's currently replacing Stephen Odendahl, I think, who's sat out due to injury in the World Championship. But yeah, quality rider in this class, and real shame, looks like he will not be taking part in the rest of this race once we're restarted. So Edgar Pons certainly will yeah, have a bit of an advantage here when we do get back underway in terms of closing that lead down. Yeah, for Edgar Pons, one of his chief rivals, looking to be out of this race now whenever we do get restarted. You can see Nicky Tooley just being loaded into the back of that ambulance. But for Tooley, his front row slot, suddenly one of those key rivals is gone for Edgar Pons. Another of his key rivals, you can see Matteo Ferrari's bike down in the pit carriages, just getting all the gravel taken out of that, just trying to clean that bike to make sure you're then able to assess the overall condition of it. You can see for Matteo Ferrari, just getting himself cleaned off as well down there. He's had a crash. He now needs to try and regroup as well, Fran. Tough for riders to do that, but you need to try and just be able to get yourself calm, get yourself ready, wait until we're able to see when the race will restart, and then build yourself up for that. Yeah, and as you can see, car heading around the track to obviously check that issue out, and hopefully they'll be able to get that sorted as soon as possible as well. Brenner definitely, you know, headed pretty soon off the track, but there were a few meters there that seemed to have been affected by the Swiss rider's bike.
Yeah, and we saw as Brenner was leaving the track, just as he was on the bit of an angle, suddenly the rear end came out from underneath him as well, so clearly the fluid was going down straight away, and he then had a big slide, so clearly a lot of fluid has gone down there. But we'll be able to wait and see how the marshals deal with that and what they're able to do, because for these marshals, Fran, they're all trained in being able to make sure that we're able to get these conditions back to racing ready as quickly as possible. We'll see them go out now, and you'll probably actually see just the track inspector just have a wee taste to make sure exactly what's gone down, whether there's oil, whether it's water, whatever fluid is down, and from that they'll then basically put down a compound just to try and soak up whatever fluid's there. They'll sweep it away, and then we'll be able to get back underway as quickly as possible. You can see race direction there, and the safety inspectors just talking with the marshals, instructing them on what to do, instructing them on where to place down any of that compound, just to make sure you're able to get that fluid lifted. You can see the 25 of Brenner, the smoke coming out as he came down onto the back straight, and then as he tips it into 7 and down in towards 8. He's on that wide line. He's on the natural racing line through those corners, and you can see as he has that slide just how much has actually gone down. It looked like maybe there was another rider as well just running themselves out wide through that, so maybe just getting caught out from it. But for all these riders now, it's just about trying to wait until we're able to see when this race will restart. It'll be a 12-lap race when we get back underway, so a 2/3 race compared to what we were expected to have. But for all these riders now, just waiting to see what will happen.
So we've got a bit of an update on Thule for you. It says rider conscious, so not been knocked out, and yeah, just getting taken to the medical centre to get doubly checked out for the fin. So that's really, really good news, usually a very, very good sign. So yeah, as you can see, his bike also now getting taken away from the track.
Yeah, you could see the ambulance as well, just that will take Tootie back to the medical centre. Good news to be able to hear that he has been conscious all the way through that crash, because it is a scary crash for all these riders. Whenever you have an incident like that, there's not an awful lot that they can do about it. Whenever you come across fluid on the racetrack, it's pretty much just luck of the draw whether or not you're going to hit that fluid, or whether or not there's going to be any sort of an issue for you as well, Fran. Yeah,
exactly, and there's a few riders there who yeah, drew the short straw in that. So yeah, a few guys going down there, but yeah, Thule now, as you can see, on his way to the medical centre, and it looks like those guys are working on sorting that issue on the track out as well as soon as possible.
Yeah, and you can see the marshals now just laying down that compound, the white compound, that basically all that does is it tries to bring together all of the fluid, and it just gives you something that you're able to sweep up. You can see the marshals now sweeping it up. It's possibly the most absorbent compound known to man, other than gluten-free flour, but for these marshals, they now need to make sure that they're able to get that track ready as quickly as possible. And this really is where you start to see just how good of a job the marshals do as well, Fran, because they're able just to get the track cleaned as quickly as possible, and we're able to get back underway as quickly as possible.
Yeah, exactly. Gluten-free flour, is that from a personal experience?
Well, I'll tell you what, there's one MotoGP World Superbike mechanic, and he's actually a crew chief now, Phil Marin, that there was one time whenever his bike had a bit of an issue, and I was given a text saying, Steve, I need you to bring down some gluten-free biscuits. And I was there like, God, Phil usually just makes fun of me for these biscuits. And as I went down into the box, I realised exactly why Phil was looking for them. Was a massive oil leak, and he wanted just to make sure that he was able to get everything mopped up as quickly as possible.
So it does have its uses then, the gluten-free lifestyle. But yeah, as you can see now, all hands on deck down there to try and get this cleaned up as quickly as possible. And you can see the trajectory as well, the number of meters that are affected by the fallout from Brenner's mechanical.
Yeah, and you could see there with the officials as well, just going down to check the track, and basically just putting their hand down to see where the fluid was, and just to be able to see where it's still damp, so that you're able to direct the marshals for where you have to make sure that you're putting down that compound. And as you can see, for the marshals, with the compound down on the ground now, just starting to sweep it up. So basically what happens with this is it's going to create that line. We're going to see it all the way through the rest of this race where the riders are going to have to go across that white compound. We're going to see it where basically there'll be a plume will come from that every time they cross over that river of that white compound. But nothing you can do for that for the rest of the field. It's just a case of trying to make sure that the track can get back to being able to be raced on. It's not ideal for the riders, but it's not the end of the world either, Fran. They're able to adapt to it. They're able to race within it.
Yeah, they are. And the commentators' challenge is to not see that puff of dust out the corner of your eye and think it's another blow up, but instead just be aware it obviously is going to be present for quite some time now down on the track, and there's a fair little run of it, but it looks like they're slowly getting that sorted out so we can hopefully get back underway again soon.
The commentators' challenge. The biggest challenge for me, Fran, has been able to say some of these names. Never mind thinking about things like that. Like, it's taken me all week to be able to say Pavelainen in one easy breath. But for all these riders, now the key thing is, as you can see, Race Directions coming back to the pits. They're going to be able to go back up into the race control tower, and they're going to be able to then say, okay, we'll be ready to go racing in X amount of minutes. So suddenly, once that car comes back into pit lane, that's when all the teams, all the riders, they then understand that we're getting close to getting racing again. And as you can see, just coming down through towards turn 8 and 9, this is where we actually have now just received that notification. In 5 minutes time the pit lane will open at 1:20. So as you can see, the marshals now making their way back to their marshal posts, so the track now is ready for racing once again. So in about 5 minutes we'll be able to get back underway. So for all these teams, all these riders, now they know exactly what they have to do. That's where it's going to be interesting to see what's happening with Matteo Ferrari's bike, whether or not they're actually going to be ready in time as well, Fran.
Yeah, exactly. That's the key challenge for the Italian now. And speaking of Italian, certainly looked like the car a little bit less pacey than the likes of Uncini that we've seen in MotoGP racing back round. But good to see, hopefully then, that it should be all sorted and we'll be ready to get underway soon. And of course, if you did catch when we said quick update on Nicky Tully, is that Ryder is conscious and now just head into the medical centre to check he's okay. So it's 2 bits of good news after that slightly scary incident. And now it's challenge for the likes of Matteo Ferrari to try and make sure they can get back in this restart.
Yeah, and for Matteo Ferrari, we'll keep an eye out for the number 11 as they retake the grid. You can see the grid hatchings have already been set up, so everyone's going to know exactly where they have to go on the grid, and we should be able to get underway in just a couple of moments' time for the riders to get back onto the grid, and then we should have a 12-lap race, and it should be a good race here in the Moto2 class. And actually, even on that opening lap, Fran, it was shaping up to be quite good between Garzo and Pons. Bit of a battle between those two.
Yeah, it was. It looked initially like Tully finding it a little bit harder to keep that pace of the front two, but I'm sure, obviously, Pons, like you said, former champion, definitely here to try and stamp some authority back on the championship now. But yeah, Garzo certainly was staying pretty close to him in those early couple laps, and yeah, I'm sure the Spaniard will be eager to attack as soon as he can. And here you see the replay of the incident again. It looked like it was Jari Montella just made contact with Brenner's machine, and then yeah, you can see then the issue for the Swiss rider's bike. So yeah, all around there is where we've had that fluid down on the track. And then, yeah, the guys who've gone down in that incident, and then the mad rush back to pit lane, of course, yeah, with any restart. And Nicky Tully there getting taken to the ambulance just to head over to the medical centre. But like I said, rider conscious is our latest update on the Finn. So, yeah, hopefully we'll see him up and okay pretty soon.
Yeah. For all these riders now, the key thing really is just to be able to get yourself ready for it. We could see there with that incident for Brenner, obviously he had clearly had a bit of a power loss on the exit of turn 6, and that's what put him into direct line as well with the number 55 of Montella, and just basically put them onto that trajectory towards the scene of that accident as well. And for Brenner, once that fluid goes down, suddenly all the cards are just set against the rest of the field down in towards that corner for the next lap. And unfortunately for Nicky Tully, he was caught out by it. Matteo Ferrari caught out as well. But as you said, Fran, some positive news for Nicky Tully as he's been brought to the medical centre and he is conscious, so hopefully his condition will be able to bring you another update on it in the next while. But for now, these Moto2 riders, they're going to have a 12-lap race. As you can see, pit lane's going to open in 20 minutes. It's going to be the quick pit lane restart procedure. So you'll have pit lane open for a minute. You'll go straight to the grid where you'll be met by one mechanic. Then once the grid forms, we'll be able to get underway for a siding lap and then straight into a 12-lap race.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, they've got to make sure they leave the pit lane within the allotted time. Remember at Mugello a couple of years ago that we had the quick restart procedure, and more than half the field didn't manage to actually get out of pit lane in time to start that race. I think that was a Moto2 race, was it not, back when Rins was in Moto2? So there is an added challenge with the quick restart procedure. In
fairness to that day, one of the biggest issues was a lot were coming from the tents at the end of the paddock as well, so a different
also
situation.
True. Bit of an extra shuffle when you've got to make it that length as well to get back on there. So here you can see those guys ready for the restart, and
Edgar Pons down there sitting down as his teammate gets ready to get himself onto the bike. We could see with Benny Solis that it does take a little bit more time for Solis as he's recovering from those injuries. But for Benny Solis, he's been put onto his bike and he'll be getting ready to head down pit lane as well. Pit lane's going to open in 25 seconds. Edgar Pons just making sure that he's in a position to be able to get himself ready. As you said, Fran, with the pit lane only open for 1 minute, you need to make sure you're there at the end of pit lane. His teammate Benny Solis straight away to the end of pit lane, and he's down there along with Kemnet Kubo on that Master Camp bike. And then we also see the number 16 down there as well. That's Alex Rubez. And for all these riders now, as you can see, just getting themselves to the end of pit lane. You can see Danny Valle there as well, the number 33, former Supersport 300 race winner in Magny Cours, the season-ending race last year. He was keen all along to try and get himself onto a 600, whether it was a Supersport bike or to race in the Moto2 Championship here in the CEV. He's been able to get that wish, and he actually looks quite good straight away on that Moto2 machine. He hasn't looked like he's been out of his depth, and it is a big step up from the 300s towards this class. Danny Valle, of course, though, as well, Fran, he raced in the CEV Moto3 Championship last year as well for a few rounds.
Yeah, Danny Valle, like you said, huge step from the likes of Supersport 300 to now in the Moto2 European Championship. But yeah, it didn't look too much of a massive obstacle for him. He took a P12 in race 1 in Estoril. Bit of a more difficult second race in 20th, but of course when it's that situation and those conditions, obviously it was a lot drier, but it still was drying, and we saw those leaders in the latter stage of that race still heading through big puddles every now and then, so no easy feat to even finish in a situation like that. So yeah, pretty good season opener from Danny Valle. It would be interesting to see what he can do now. And as you can see, we are back on track and getting ready for that quick restart.
Yeah, the quick restart where the pit lane stays open for, as you can see there, 60 seconds, and then we reform in the original grid. That original grid had Matteo Ferrari. You can see Zacconi's down there as well. Zacconi was another rider that had a crash on that site on the original race start, so just didn't get himself ready in time. And you can also see Sar Moon down there as well on the number 50 machine. But we'll keep an eye out to see if the number 11 of Matteo Ferrari was able to get himself out there as well, because Matteo Ferrari, we saw, needed quite a bit of work done to his bike down there in the pit box. Yeah,
you could see the fairing of Ferrari's bike. Kind of Marshall's trying to decide whether it's better to push it back on or take it off. So like you say, fair bit of damage to that machine for the Italian. And yeah, it will be interesting to see if he will be able to get back in this race. I suspect possibly not, unfortunately, but time will tell us. And yeah, Edgar Pons now heading down to pole position for the second time in fairly quick succession, and I'm sure he will be aiming to do what he did in the first start.
Yeah, we'll see if there's any empty grid slots there. Is that actually Ferrari on the grid? It might be his teammate down there, but Ferrari will be on the 4th row of the grid if he is on the grid. Everyone comes into their original grid positions, which means this man, Edgar Pons, starts from pole. Fran, we said earlier on, you can see actually there is actually quite a lot of riders not on the grid right now, including Nicky Tully, obviously. Alessandro Zacconi was on the 2nd row of the grid. You can see him down there on the number 61, and it looks like Brenner and obviously Ferrari as well aren't on that grid as well. So 4 of the leading 4 rows of the grid missing spots there as well. So for Edgar Pons, he's now got a clear run, but they'll be able to do another siding lap, get themselves back to the grid, and then get this race restarted, the 12-lap race. But it does sort of free up some space for some of the riders around them as well, Fran, on that run down in towards turn 1.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously now Pons and Garzo have a bit of breathing space around them on the grid. But
Ferrari is out there, Fran, as well.
Ferrari is out there, so that's a pretty impressive job to get that bike back out there. But yeah, so obviously Pons and Garzo have some breathing space around them on the grid, but then also obviously those guys who are on the third row who've now got a bit of space in front of them can try and focus on filling that as quickly as possible once the lights go out and really make a run down into turn 1.
Yeah, sorry for talking across you there, Fran.
No
Just
worries.
so excited to see Matteo Ferrari on the grid. But for Matteo Ferrari on that number 11, really good job by his team to be able to get him back out there. He'll start from the 4th row of the grid in 11th position, but obviously with some of the riders not taking this start, that's actually elevated a couple of positions all the same. Edgar Pons is going to be on pole. As we said, he's been able to have a lot of pole positions in the past. He's converted a lot of them too, but that start to the race, he needs to make sure he's able to get a good start, be able to stay out in front. He's on pole position on the number 57. Hector Garza is on 2nd on the grid. He's at 6 positions in qualifying, never been able to take a pole position, so he keeps knocking on that door as well, Fran, on the number 4 machine. And with Nicky Tully not able to take the start of this race, there's only 2 riders in the front row. Tommaso Marcone and Jari Montella will make up row 2 because Alessandro Zacconi will start from pit lane. On the 3rd row of the grid, Brenner was the reason for the red flag. He's not taking this restart. Miguel Pons and Kaz Medin will start on the 3rd row of the grid, just in front of Matteo Ferrari. Ramdan Roslan, podium man in the opening round of the race, and then Kuba on the Master Camp bike as well. So all the riders now getting ready for the start.
They are. Are you finding it as hard to say Kubo and not a Kubo as I am?
I am a big fan of Hikaru Kubo.
But yeah, as you can see, Edgar Pons doing his classic weave there, boogieing down to pole position, looking fairly relaxed is the Spaniard. And yeah, with good reason if he can repeat that first race start that we saw earlier, which was yeah, pretty good work from the Spaniard to take the whole shot. But Garzo, I'm sure now, is happy to get a second chance at trying to attack early for that lead. Yeah,
Edgar Pons on the 57. He had 2 podiums in the first round of the year in Estoril. Garzo crashed out of the first race of the season, didn't finish on the podium in race 2, finished 4th. Is he going to be able to get himself onto the podium? And then you've got the 2 speed ups on row 2 of the grid, and then Miguel Pons is down there on the 3rd row of the grid. It looks like Matteo Ferrari's being forced to start from pit lane, so maybe he didn't get out in time. The red lights are on, the red lights go out, and it looks like Pons has made a good start. Garzo as well making a good start from the front row of the grid. Is he going to be close enough to try and attack down in towards turn 1? It looks like Pons being able to convert that pole position into the whole shot down in towards turn 1. The number 10 of Marcone gets down the inside into 3rd position, and now the riders that will start from pit lane will have been released and they'll try and work their way through the field. The number 55 of Montella is up in 4th position, but off the start, Fran, nice and clean for all these riders. Yeah, nice clean start, second time round again, and yeah, Edgar Pons doing exactly what he needed to do and immediately taking that whole shot. And yeah, you could see Marcon, the slightly more experience of those 2 speed up riding teammates, immediately attacking there to take over in 3rd. And I think it'd be interesting now to see what the likes of Zacconi and Ferrari can do from pit lane. Obviously it's a fairly big ask, and also making that worse for them is that it's obviously a shortened race distance now, so there's less time to try and make up that deficit. Yeah, I'm getting very confused by Ferrari. He did actually start from the 4th row of the grid. He's up there in 6th position. So for Matteo Ferrari, good performance there as he tries to recover from that crash in the aborted start of this race. But you can see with Edgar Pons out in front, these leading 5 riders with Miguel Pons at the back of it. So it is a Pons sandwich in this leading 5 positions, but Miguel Pons at the back of that group trying to get himself through. Marcel Brenner being able to take this start as well, and obviously Brenner, there's the compound that's been left to try and lift the fluid that was dropped by Marcel Brenner, but Brenner able to take this restart as well on the number 25 machine. Yep, so saw the Swiss rider heading back out there, and Garzo able to home in a little bit on Edgar Pons there in the lead. Looks like he's going to be fairly eager to make a move pretty quickly, just heading past our commentary position, and yeah, pretty much completely together those 2. And Garzo looked like he was a bit tempted there, but just hanging back, and Pons still in control of this race at the moment. But it looks like the likes of Zacconi certainly, definitely confirmed pit lane starter, is now up into 15th, it says on our timing screen. So that is an incredible job from the Italian. So yeah, have to see what he can do. Yeah, and also I'm not the only one that got confused by the grid for this restarted race, because Sarmoon's been given a penalty for going to the incorrect grid slot. He'll have a ride through penalty. So Sarmoon on that number 50, he's going to have to come through the pits. He's down the order anyway at the moment. He's down in 12th position, but going to drop to the back of the field. Yeah, a bit of a heartbreaker there, and hopefully he won't make the classic mistake of late and do the long lap penalty instead of a ride through, and he'll see what that penalty is and serve it
pretty quickly. But yeah, always a bit of a heartbreaker is a ride through, because yeah, you really lose so much time going through the pits. But obviously, headed to the wrong grid spot, and just like we saw in a couple of the races in Estoril, that's a price you have to pay, unfortunately, is a ride through. Yeah, and
it's easily done whenever there's a lot of riders not actually taking their original grid positions.
Exactly.
As well.
I would not like to have a go at it at all. For me, it would be impossible to check out exactly where I'm supposed to be when there's so many not lining up in their grid positions. But just behind these guys here that you can see Sarmoon, is Zacconi right behind him.
Oh, so, and you can see at the back of the grid as well, Sarmoon on the number 50, he just slots himself up into a different position. So a couple of riders getting themselves a little bit confused.
There, yeah, exactly. But like we said, pretty confusing when there are so many not blank spaces, empty spaces rather, down on the grid. So yeah, I'll have to see. Hopefully he'll see that penalty board and head through soon. But yeah, it is Zacconi who's right behind him at the moment. So super impressive from the Italian to already be making some serious progress through the field here.
Yeah, Zacconi always has been an aggressive rider, and having to come through the field, he's really been able to embrace that as well. He's up into 13th spot now at the moment, just behind Sarmoon and Jerry Salim as well. So good performance there from the Italian rider. He's had the pace to be a lot further up the field, obviously, but just having missed his 1 minute window to get out of the pits, he's had to start from pit lane.
Yeah, like you say, not known for his calm ways so much, Zacconi. Super aggressive. I think we both remember the Aragon round of 2016 when that European Supersport class began, and Zacconi and then teammate Axel Bassani completely exploded into the class with some fairly impressive battles that round. And yeah, Zacconi certainly able to get in there and elbows out, and yeah, paying off for the Italian at the moment. Really impressive. And of course, hopefully the likes of Sarmoon, who has got that penalty to serve, the tyre rider won't get in his way too much and make him lose too much time, because obviously he will have to leave that position pretty soon.
Yeah, and for all these riders around them, it's just about trying to make sure you're able to make the moves pretty cleanly, because in the 12-lap race, suddenly everything gets so much more critical. You're at basically a race that's lost 1/3 distance. So for all these riders, instead of being able to bed themselves in for the opening few laps of the race, try and stay with riders, suddenly all of your tactics change considerably. That's why you've got Montella on the 55 just trying to make that move on his teammate Marcone, and Miguel Pons behind them just keeping that watching brief. The gap between the number 4 there of Hector Garzo and Marcone and Montella in 3rd and 4th position, that stretched out to around about 2 seconds now. So they've got a bit of work to do in the final 8.5 laps of this race to try and move themselves up into that leading group. But you can see there with Montella on the number 55 just looking nice and comfortable since he's been able to get through on his teammate Tommaso Marcone. So for the 2 speed-up riders, they now just need to try and make sure that they're able to get their head down, try and make some progress and see if they're able to keep the 2 race leaders honest. But there has been a bit of a gap between Garzo, Pons, Nicky Tully as well during the practice and qualifying sessions and the rest of the field, Fran.
Yeah, definitely. These guys have to make sure they don't get in too much of a civil war here if they are going to try and bridge that gap. But at the moment, like you said, obviously we are missing a bike who looked like it was going to challenge at the front, that of Nicky Tully. Do have a bit of an update on the Finn, actually. He has essentially been winded, so he's been hit in the chest. I think that might have been the bike of Ferrari, but it seems like there's nothing broken. He's conscious and just under observation in the medical centre at the moment, so that's really, really good news. Obviously, don't know if you've ever been winded or had anything like that, but it's quite a considerable thwack is that, and trying to recover from that. So obviously it explains why the Finn was in the gravel trap for quite a while there. But good news.
Yeah, it can take your breath away very easily and just leave you where you have to make sure that you're just taking that little bit of precaution for Nicky Tully. But good to hear that nothing broken for Tully, because it did look like he had been taking quite a battering in that crash as well. We saw him lying down for a long time, and good for Nicky Tully that at least this is a race as well, Fran, a round with only 1 race, so you're not going to lose as many points as possible.
In terms of the championship, obviously the main thing is he's okay, you know, in inverted commas, so that's obviously the most important thing after a crash like that. But then of course, yeah, like we say, racers always immediately looking straight back at looking to get you know, back on the track and competing again. And today it is a better day to have an unfortunate incident like that, because like you say, there's only 25 points up for grabs in this single race for the Moto2 guys here, and I'll try and make more sense in my sentences from now on.
It's hard to make sense of a Moto2 race as well at times.
It is, but not for Edgar Pons, it would seem. Looks like the daylight is slowly starting to stretch out between him and that Tectoy machine with Hector Garzo on it, and it looks like as well Montella has got past Marcon. I'm not sure if our timing screen is quite as on it.
Yeah, we saw that move down in towards turn 1.
It looks like it's kept the little arrow, you see, so it's confused me. Thought it was a new move again. But yeah, so that little speed up battle to complete the podium looks like that's going to rage for a while. And we see Marcel Brenner initially seemed able to get back in that race, but sadly not to be, and the Swiss rider pulls back into pit lane. Yeah,
a bit confusing to see Brenner out in the race after that technical failure, but for Brenner, he's now out of this race. Still haven't seen Sarmoon take his penalty. The number 50 rider, he's still there in those leading groups, but down in the points paying positions in 14th. Alessandro Zacconi, though, making progress as well, Fran. He's now just behind Ramadan Rosley, and for Rosley, of course, podium man in Estoril, he's now got the race winner from Estoril right behind them as well with Zacconi. It looks like Sarmoon has taken his penalty potentially. It looks like his name just falling down our timing tower, but we'll wait and see whether or not he's actually come into the pits to take his penalty. You can see Montella on the 55 running in the podium spots in front of his teammate Marcon. The gap between them and Miguel Pons that stretched out to around about 2 seconds.
Yeah, it looked like initially Pons was going to be a little bit closer, but at the moment it's a little speed up civil war for third at the moment, so plenty at stake for these two. Obviously Montella would be a first podium, but Marcon, like we said, and we've continued to be able to avoid saying Macron by accident, he has had podium form, so yeah, for these guys should be a good battle, I imagine, if they've got similar pace throughout this race.
Yeah, for Marcon, he has been able to, of course, race in the Moto2 World Championship as well. He raced here at Valencia at the season-ending round last year, just before the final round of the CEV Moto2 European Championship, and he did retire from that race, but obviously you gain an awful lot of experience just by having that one weekend in the Moto2 World Championship. Hector Garzo up in second spot. He's doing his best to keep Edgar Pons honest here as well, Fran, and for Garzo, he's from Valencia, and this really is obviously not a home race for him, but is he going to have the opportunity to add to his Albacete win last year? He's been a regular top 3 runner over the course of the last couple of years. Fran, really looks like he's got quite a bit of talent to be able to go there with Edgar Pons on a consistent basis. Yeah,
definitely. Like you say, he is a race winner from last year in Albacete. Those conditions then were incredibly different to those we have now, which is why it was incredibly surprising to see him crash out so early in Estoril, since that flooded Albacete was when he really shone there. But yeah, Garzo in the drive this weekend, the only man able to stay within the same postcode really as former champion Edgar Pons. So certainly for Pons, all going to plan, and we'll have to see if yeah, local lad Hector Garzo can keep that gap within sort of half a second, or certainly under a second, and hang in there.
Yeah, we're at half distance here for the Moto2 race, obviously shortened by that red flag. Edgar Pons still leading from Garzo, half a second between the two race leaders, as you can see from the timing tower on the left hand side of the screen. A big gap then to Montella and Marcon. Miguel Pons on his own, Matteo Ferrari also on his own right now, but he's got Kazmadine closing in on him. Last time around, Kazmadine pulled in a few tenths of a second to start putting some pressure on Matteo Ferrari. Behind them, Alessandro Zacconi, really good recovery ride from the number 61, race winner in Estoril, and he's running inside the top 10 in 8th position, just in front of Adam Norridin as well. And obviously Norridin, a name that we know as well, Fran, lots of Moto3 experience in the world stage, and just bringing that step to try and learn how to ride a Moto2 bike, gain your experience on a bigger bike, racing here in the CEV Championship. This though is the scrap for 6th, Matteo Ferrari on the number 11, just in front of Kazmadine.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, Norridin electing to have a crack at this championship just to gain experience on a Moto2 machine without the pressure of moving up within the World Championship. And yeah, I think still maybe most famous to the casual viewer for that run in Argentina a couple of years ago, but yeah, some solid performances there for the Malaysian, and yeah, good to see him again in the top 10 here in the dry. Pretty different conditions, like I keep repeating, but it looks so far then like Garzo is just about able to hang on to at least within that sort of half second. It's gone up by just about a tenth at the moment, but it is by no means, that gap's not certainly growing at the rate maybe you could have expected once you saw Pons take that whole shot. So have to keep an eye on that. But like you were saying, there's a few riders just on their own at the moment in some clear air. But some good duels out there as well with Kazmaidin and Ferrari, and then obviously the Montella Marcon fight for third at the moment. Yeah,
all about the fight for the race victory as well, though, with Edgar Pons just getting caught a little bit by Garzo as well. Pons seems to have a little bit of an edge in terms of his outright pace. He's been a tenth of a second, 2/10 of a second faster than Garzo all the way through this weekend. But Garzo's digging deep here as well. Through turn 13, he's right there with Edgar Pons, putting Pons under pressure, forcing Pons to take that tight line through the last corner. Garzo's being really clever here, and that's the 21 that's gone down. That's Matt Megler that's gone down. It looks like that could be down at turn 8 for Megler, so the end of the back straight. And fast place to go off again, just like what we saw with the red flag induced incident earlier on in this race as well. You can crash at turn 8. It's 140 miles an hour. It's fast through there, so good to see Matt Megler up on his feet. This is the scrap for third between the two speed ups, with Jari Montella just out in front of his teammate Marcon. This is the fight for the race lead. Pons and Garzo, 4 laps to go, Fran, and it really is a case of ticking down the laps for Garzo and Pons, making sure that if one of those riders makes a mistake, you can pounce on it. You can see last time around, Garzo a lot faster than Pons. That's why he's right there in the rear wheel now. Yeah, exactly. It had been just under 5/10, then it was just under 6/10, and looked like maybe Pons was able to pull the pin a little bit. But Garzo now, when they went across the line, it was 0.134 between the two, and you can obviously see visually very, very close now is Garzo. Will be interesting to see now if he's going to immediately push to try and attack Pons, or if he's going to sit there and if he can keep up with his compatriot. Yeah, and this is the big challenge for Pons as well, because he's tried to pull away, he's tried to open a gap, he's tried to make sure he's out in front. He might have led every corner of this race so far, but once you look at your pit board and you see 0.1 and 0.2 and that gap just coming down, no matter how hard you're pressing, that's when it gets really tough for a rider. That's whenever you start to see the real character. And of course, for Edgar Pons on that 57, he's a former champion. He wants to get back to winning this CEV Moto2 championship. Can he do it here in Valencia? Can he get back onto the top step of the podium? He had 2 podiums in the opening round of the year in Estoril, but down in towards turn 1, you can see the number 4 Garzo trying to attack down into turn 1. Not quite close enough for Garzo. Down into turn 1, you can try and dive down the inside, or you can try and run with a bit more corner speed and try and then set up your move down in towards turn 2. Garzo's not quite close enough on this lap, but this is the key overtaking opportunity. Get yourself down the inside, block pass down in towards turn 2. If you can't make the move there, suddenly you've got to try and start to think about where else you can make a move. Turn 6 is a key overtaking opportunity, and it's all set up from right here, exiting turn 5, all the way through here. You want to be able to make sure you're able to carry your momentum through this section, down in towards turn 6, try and block pass down that inside. Yeah, it looks like Pons is a little bit scrappier there, not quite the complete, composure that we've seen in the initial stages here. But I'm guessing Joan Diaz is the top stock runner. He is indeed in 19th at the moment, top stock runner. Don't forget the championship within a championship. And I can see in the distance, actually, although we're not seeing it on TV, there's been another change of position in the duel for third, I believe. But now you can see Garzo really on the back of Pons once again. Looked like there was a couple more tenths, and now right on the back of him, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him move soon. Yeah, you can see with Pons, he's really strong through turns 3, 4 and 5, so the 2 right-handers in particular at the start of the lap, so he's going to be tough to overtake down in towards turn 6, but you can make a move on him in this second half of the lap. You can see as they get through on one of the stock 600 riders at the back of the field, but you can try and make a move at the end of the lap if you're Garzo, and see if you're able to try and attack on Pons. Pons on the 57, though, he's led all the way through this race. He looks comfortable with 2 laps to go as they come down the gears down in towards turn 1, and for Garzo, he needs to make sure he's absolutely on the limit all the way through that section. As you said, Fran, Marcon up into third position there, just in front of his teammate Montella. That move was made down in towards turn 8, so it's a good thing that you were looking outside the window for that one, Fran. It's one of the best things about Valencia here. You can sit and stand pretty much anywhere in Valencia and see the entire racetrack. Really is a great place to come for a race, and if you can get here for the final round of the CEV Championship or the final round of the MotoGP World Championship really is one of the best places to come for any race. This is where Pons is really good. Look at him as he slides that bike on the entry into 6. He's got total confidence in himself, and that's why he's been able to stretch out this lead. It was a 1/10 of a second at the start of this lap. It's a lot bigger than a 1/10 of a second now.
It really is, yeah. You can see a big difference there. I have to see Garzo, obviously time running out a little bit now for the local man, and Pons really seems to be pulling the pin now as we head towards the final lap.
Yeah, if you're Garzo, he didn't stand on the podium in Estoril despite being really strong in Estoril. Now he might just have to start thinking about being able just to claim the 20 points per second. There's a bit of a gap between himself and Edgar Pons. It looks like it's stretched out to around about 5-6 tenths of a second. You can see that's the gap at the start of the lap. It's definitely a lot bigger now as we come through the penultimate corner on the penultimate lap. Pons, though, still aggressive. You can see sliding on the entry down in towards the left-hander. He's still trying to make sure that he's setting fast lap times, trying to make sure he's able to pull away from the rider behind them. Edgar Pons starting his final lap of the race just in front of Garzo. Half a second is the gap. Behind them, it's the two speed-ups of Marcon and Montella. Then there's a big gap between them and Miguel Pons. Behind that, it's still Matteo Ferrari out in front in 6th position from Kazmedine, and then Zacconi in 8th position just in front of Noureddin and Rosley rounding out the top 10. But as you can see, rounding out these opening corners of the final lap of this race, you can see Edgar Pons in this 12-lap race just being able to stretch his legs a little bit in the closing stages, just being able to edge himself away from Garzo in 2nd position. The gap between them and the speed-ups, it's up to 9 seconds. So Edgar Pons and Garzo in this shortened race really doing well to be able just to make sure that they can keep pushing out as much of a lead as possible. Pons now coming down in towards turn 8. This is where we saw the red flag come out for the technical failure for Brenner at the start of the original race, and for Edgar Pons, he's able to get through it unscathed. But for Edgar on that number 57, just coming through into the final sectors of the lap now. Half a lap from home, half a lap from his 12th CEV Moto2 victory, his first victory of the season. He was on the podium in both races in Estoril, and this really is a strong showing from Pons because he's been fast all the way through the weekend, qualified on pole position, and now putting himself into a position to claim the race victory here in Valencia. He's opened up that gap a little bit more to Hector Garzo. But for Edgar Pons, as he comes around the last corner, he can see the checkered flag, and Edgar Pons, he's going to pick up his first victory of the season here in the Moto2 European Championship. Really good stuff from Edgar Pons on that 57 to claim this victory, just in front of Hector Garzo, less than a second between the leading riders, and that's the number 10 of Marcon coming across the line, and a big gap between himself and Montella on that final lap. It looks like Montella might have tried to make a move on that final lap and made a mistake, and that's what ended up separating the two speed-up riders, with Miguel Pons up in 5th position just in front of Matteo Ferrari inside the top 6. So good performance there from Matteo Ferrari, bouncing back from that crash in the original start of this race. Zacconi's managed to get himself up into 8th position, so that's a good performance from the Italian rider. And for Zacconi, of course, race victor in the opening round of the season in Estoril. He also had a 5th place finish during that race. Diaz, though, is the top stock 600 rider, and he comes across the line in 19th position just in front of Alessandro Zetti, and good performance there from Diaz to claim the stock 600 victory. But in this Moto2 race, it's all about one man, just as it has been all the way through this weekend. Edgar Pons claiming the victory here in Valencia. That's his 12th success in the Moto2 class here in the European Championship. Really good stuff from Edgar Pons, the number 57, back on top here in Moto2. Hector Garzo, as you can see there, in 2nd position as well. He is a former race winner in this class. He also had podiums in lots of races last year. He's been a regular top 3 runner in the Moto2 class over the last couple of years. And for Hector Garzo on that Tech 12 machine, that is a good performance to be able to get himself up onto the podium. Just didn't quite have the answers for Edgar Pons through this race, but it's a home round for Garzo, and he'll be able to celebrate with a podium finish as well. And you can see with Edgar Pons as he rounds his way through on this celebration lap. Good stuff from Pons to be able to claim the victory. He's looked fast all the way through this weekend. He's looked to being the pace setter all the way through this week, and he's been able now to pick up that race victory and really just looked like he was very comfortable all the way through this weekend in the CEV Moto2 class. And for Edgar Pons, he now needs to make sure he's able to build on that. He wants to try and be multiple champion in this class, try and join the likes of Jordi Torres and also Jasko Raffin as being multiple champions in the CEV Moto2 class. And for Edgar, he can go down into Park Ferme, he can be greeted by his team. His job's done for the day. We've got another race coming up for the Moto3 class, but for the Moto2 class, only the one race this weekend. The next time that we'll see Edgar Pons in action will be at the start of June in Catalonia, so he's got a bit of time off between now and his next round of the championship, but he'll certainly be able to enjoy this race victory, because that really was an impressive performance. And you're only as good as your last race, and for the next 6 weeks he's the best man in this field. And for Edgar Pons, he'll now be able to try and just build on that over the course of this season. 3 podiums from the first 3 races of the season. Just shows how strong he's been. Garzo back up on the podium for the first time this season. He had a retirement in the opening race of the year. We saw him crash out in the opening lap in Estoril. He bounced back to finish inside the top 5 in race 2, and now he's able to finish in second spot and claim 20 championship points. Incy Tommaso Marcone down there in Park Ferme as well. 16 points for Marcone, but more importantly for him, he came out on top of that battle of the speed-up riders with his teammate Jari Montala, and able to stand on the podium here in the CEV Moto2 class. You can see the fans just making sure that they've got their sun cream on. You certainly need it around this Ricardo Tormo circuit, because it's roasting here in Valencia this weekend, and pretty much perfect conditions for bike racing, perfect conditions for just coming out and watching some racing as well. And for all these fans, they're about to be treated to another Moto3 race, which should get underway in just a couple of moments' time, with the pit lane opening a little bit late due to the red flag during this race. So the Moto3 race just being delayed slightly on till we get to that point. But this is the moment where Edgar Pons comes across the line and claims his first victory of the season. We're going to be able to hear from Edgar in a couple of moments' time down in Park Ferme as well, and it'll be interesting to see what he has to say, because this really was a complete performance from Edgar Pons, fast all the way through the weekend, and able to convert it with the race victory. Really strong performance from Pons to be able to take his 12th victory in the CEV Moto2 class, and certainly for Edgar, he'll now be looking to make sure he can build on that. But let's hear what the race victor Edgar Pons has to say down in Park Ferme with Fran Wild.
So Edgar, pretty incredible win here today, your first of the season, and I'm sure you'd be pretty happy with those 25 points.
Yeah, I'm happy because it was a bit hard, the race. We did some adjustments for the qualifying too that were not good, so we tried to make a perfect setting, but in the race we realized that the tire was it too much the tire, so at the end I have very little grip. I nearly flied once, so I decided to just slow down a bit, try to fool a bit Garzo, no, so that they think that this was the rhythm, and in the last laps try to push a bit more. And yeah, no, I'm happy because I struggled the race, and I didn't know if I was able to keep up the rhythm, so I'm pleased.
Y también en castellano, por favor.
Sí, estoy contento, ¿no? La carrera no ha sido sencilla porque hemos hecho un cambio de cara al warm-up para intentar perfeccionar la moto, pero en el warm-up la temperatura era mucho más baja, entonces había mucho más grip, y ahora que la temperatura ha subido tanto, pues el neumático se desgastaba mucho, ¿no? Y he tenido un par de sustos y no sabía si podía hacer toda la carrera bien, así que he decidido aflojar un poco el ritmo, hacer para que Garzo pues pensara que ese era el ritmo, ¿no? Que los neumáticos estaban destrozados, y después pues me he jugado las últimas vueltas, he apretado un poquito más y he podido separar un poco, así que muy contento, dar gracias al equipo y nada, la próxima más.
Gracias, enhorabuena.
Gracias.
Edgar Pons there saying that he actually eased off during that race just to make sure that he was able to manage his tyre wear, and that's a big worry for the rest of the field, because Pons looked strong all the way through this race. You can see got the whole shot at the start of the race, and he managed to stay out in front all the way through proceedings, and Edgar Pons on that number 57 able to claim the race victory. There was a red flag in the initial stages. That was for Marcel Brenner having this technical problem, and it actually led to a pretty nasty crash for a couple of riders, including including front row starter Nicky Tooley. Luckily for Tooley, it seems that he's just been winded and should be back in action at the next round in Catalonia for these riders, but unfortunately for Tooley, out of action for this race and misses out on some valuable championship points. Matteo Ferrari was also caught up in the accident, but Ferrari was able to get himself back to the pits, as you can see there, with a naked bike. But for Matteo Ferrari, he was able to get that bike repaired, start from the 4th row of the grid and come through the finish inside the top 10. But in the restarted race, it was a shortened race to 12 laps. Edgar Pons got his way to the front straight away. He was able to work away with Garzo at the front of the field and try and pull a little bit of a gap. They were able to do that from the 2 speed-up riders in pretty quick order, and the 2 speed-ups just dropped a little bit behind the race leaders. This is their scrap for the podium spots with Montella and Marcone, and Marcone will come out on top of that scrap. That's Brenner coming in to retire from the race for the 2nd time, and for the 2 speed-up riders just trying to be a bit aggressive with one another, and it would eventually come out to Marcone on top. But at the front of the field, Garzo tried to attack back on Edgar Pons, but wasn't quite ever able to get close enough to try and actually make a move on Pons. Good riding from Pons on the number 57 to be able to claim this race victory, and it's his 12th victory in the Moto2 class. So as you can see from the race results, Edgar Pons at the flag, able to take that race victory by just under a second from Garzo. Marcone came out on top of that all speed up scrap for the podium spots, and in 12 laps it was a mistake at the very end from Montella that just stretched that gap out to just under 4 seconds. Miguel Pons had a lonely race in 5th position in front of Matteo Ferrari, who had a bit of a ding-dong battle with Kazmedine, and Alessandro Zacconi did well to be able to recover from pit lane to be able to finish inside the top 10. Adam Norridon finished inside the top 10 as well, and the Moto2 rookie able to have a good performance there to finish inside 10th, just in front of Danny Valle. Of course, Valle coming up from the Supersport 300 class, able to score decent points in 11th position, and Alex Ruse was the final points paying score, just in front of Cedric Tonga, the oldest man in the field. See, over the course of this 12-lap race, it did start to get stretched out quite a bit. There's quite a few stock 600 riders in the field, including Joan Diaz, who finished as the leading stock 600 rider, and we'll be able to see Diaz up there on the podium to claim his honours as that championship within a championship. But down the order, there were a couple of riders that would be looking to bounce back if we had another race, but the likes of Brenner, Nicky Tooley, Matt Megel, all out of this race. Hopefully for Nicky Tooley, we'll be able to see him back in action in June at Catalonia for the next round of the Moto2 Championship. But Tooley unfortunately taken out during this race after he ran across that fluid that was left from Brenner's technical problem. So the riders getting ready to go onto the podium. Top step of the podium for Edgar Pons, just in front of Garzo and Marcon. You can see Diaz on the left-hand side of the shot. He's the leading stock 600 rider for this race, but Edgar Pons able to claim that 12th victory of his Moto2 career. And for Edgar, once again, we're able just to see a clever race from Pons. He said he was managing his tyre by the end of proceedings, but for Edgar Pons, he always looked like he had that little bit of pace in hand when he needed it to try and stretch out a bit of a lead from Garzo. Joan Diaz, he's the leading stock 600 rider in this field, and he's able to take that race victory. So Joan Diaz with another trophy to take home, but the trophies for the Moto2 race, they'll first go to Marcone, and the speed up rider, he had a good battle with his teammate Montella, and really important for Marcone to come out on top of that, because Montella was one of the stars of the opening round of the season. So good performance there from Montella to be able to claim that podium position. Hector Garzo with another podium, but he's still waiting to add to that lone victory in the CEV Moto2 class. He didn't quite have enough to answer the questions of Edgar Pons, but Pons was certainly able to answer every question that was posed to him through the course of this weekend. Winning from pole position there for Pons, and this really was a strong performance from the former champion. And is this going to be the foundations of his championship charge once again? He is the 2015 Moto2 champion, and he's trying to make sure he's able to become a double champion in the class. We'll be able to hear the Spanish national anthem for Edgar Pons, our Moto2 race winner.
Ahí está, un aplauso para
So the
los
Spanish
tres
national anthem there for Edgar Pons, and Edgar, a race winner once again. He's had 3 podiums to start his Moto2 campaign, and for Pons he'll move on to the next round in the championship in Catalonia in June, and he'll be certainly looking to make sure he can add to that success. But on the podium alongside him, Garzo and Marcon, just alongside Diaz, the leading Stock 600 rider. So as you can see from the championship standings, Edgar Pons moves his way back up to the top of the standings by 16 points from Nicky Tully. Tully, of course, retired from this race in that scary crash, and hopefully we'll see Tully back next time out. But for Alessandro Zacconi, good damage limitation from Zacconi, moves himself a little bit closer to Tully, 17 points off the top of Edgar Pons, with Garzo and Marcon inside those top 5 positions. Rosley was a podium man in Estoril. He was down the order in this race, but for the likes of Montella, Pons and Matteo Ferrari, plenty to build on from this race here in Valencia for the next round of the championship in Catalonia as well, Fran.
Definitely, and yeah, unfortunate for Tully, as you can see, pretty expensive date in the championship. But like you also said, hopefully we'll see him back next time out. And yeah, some fairly interesting names in there. Jerry Salim certainly seems to be adapting pretty well to Moto2, and Adam Noureddin just a couple of places ahead of him as well. But yeah, we can see all the way down there, obviously Sam Wilford not here this weekend. That was just a one-off in Estoril, but still on the board, which is no mean feat.
Yeah, and you can see Joan Diaz there, the leading Stock 600 rider. Just seeing a notification there from Race Direction about a new schedule. Not actually sure what class that's for, but for all these riders, we should have the Moto3 race just about to start as well. It's been delayed slightly, and it should be starting off pretty soon now as well. So the riders should be leaving pit lane at 2 o'clock local time for the Moto3 class. So for the...
Yeah, imagine we're not going to have to wait an hour for pit lane to open. I think the graphics are a little bit off there. But yeah, here we go then. Next up, another Moto3 race here at the still very sunny Valencia.